The heavy bag in Murphy's boxing gym swayed like a drunk man after my last punch. Sweat dripped from my forehead onto the cracked concrete floor, mixing with decades of other fighters' efforts. The place smelled like determination and broken dreams, which suited me just fine. At least here, everything was honest. My phone buzzed against the bench where I'd left it next to my water bottle. A text from Maren, my wife of 8 years, a selfie from what looked like an expensive hotel room. She was smiling that perfect marketing executive smile she'd perfected for client meetings. But in the mirror behind her, clear as day, was the reflection of a man's bare chest. "Well, would you look at that?" I muttered, wiping my hands on a towel. Maren always was terrible with technology. The man in the mirror wasn't me. I recognized him immediately. Hale Trenwick, CEO of TechFlow Industries, where Maren worked as head of marketing. The same Hale who'd been mentioned in casual conversation a few too many times over the past 6 months. The same Hale whose wife, Ayla, had sent me a cryptic message last week. "We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow?" I'd met Ayla at that coffee shop, a nervous woman with intelligent eyes who'd laid out her suspicions about her husband's affairs. She'd shown me credit card statements, hotel receipts, and a pattern of late meetings that matched perfectly with Maren's mysterious overtime schedule. "Frank," I called to the gym owner, an ex-boxer who'd been running this place since before I was born. "I'm heading out early today." Frank Dorsey looked up from wrapping another fighter's hands. "Everything all right, Brent? You look like someone just told you your car got towed." "Something like that." I grabbed my gear and headed for the door. Sometimes the truth hits harder than any punch. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my garage, staring at the corkboard I'd mounted on the wall 6 months ago. Photos, receipts, screenshots of text messages, hotel bookings, all the evidence I'd been gathering while pretending to be the oblivious husband. My restored 1967 Mustang sat nearby, a reminder of better times when the biggest worry in my life was finding the right carburetor parts. My phone rang. Ayla's name appeared on the screen. "Did you get it?" she asked without preamble. "Oh, I got it all right. She sent me a selfie by accident. Your husband's reflection is right there in the mirror." "Perfect. Are you ready for tonight?" I looked at the hotel keycard she'd given me yesterday, the one for the room adjoining the suite where Hale and Maren were having their little rendezvous. Ayla had her ways of getting information, and I'd learned not to ask too many questions about her methods. "I've been ready for months," I said. "The question is, are you sure you want to go through with this? Once we open that door, there's no going back." "Brent, they've been laughing at us behind our backs for half a year. They think we're too stupid to notice, too weak to fight back. Tonight we show them exactly how wrong they are." After the call, I stayed in the dimming garage, reflecting on what had brought me to this point. 3 years earlier, I had sold my construction company for enough to retire with ease. Maren had cheered me on back then, proud of what I'd achieved, but over time she'd begun to view me as a burden, someone who no longer fit with her polished, career-driven aspirations. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was cheating with her boss while I was the one with actual money in the bank. But Maren had always been attracted to power more than wealth, and Hale Trenwick had plenty of both. I checked my watch. 8:30. Time to get this show started. The Lakeside Grand Hotel was the kind of place where Maren liked to be seen, all marble and gold fixtures that screamed expensive taste. I walked through the lobby like I belonged there, which wasn't hard since I was wearing the same suit I'd worn to our wedding anniversary dinner last month, back when I still believed we had something worth celebrating. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like it lasted forever. When the doors opened, I could hear voices from down the hall. Maren's laugh, the one she used when she was trying to impress someone important. It used to charm me. Now it just sounded calculating. I slipped the keycard into room 1547 and stepped inside. The adjoining suite was on the other side of a thin wall, and I could hear everything. Hale's voice, confident and commanding. Maren's responses, breathless with excitement. They were discussing more than just their affair. They were planning how to push me out of the picture entirely. "He's getting suspicious," Maren was saying. "Yesterday he asked why I was working so many weekends." "Don't worry about Brent," Hale replied. "He's a simple man. Give him a boxing match on TV and a cold drink, and he'll forget all about it." "I just feel bad sometimes. He's not a terrible person." "He's holding you back, Maren. You're brilliant, ambitious, destined for bigger things than being married to a retired contractor who spends his free time hitting punching bags." That's when I heard the adjoining door unlock from the other side. Ayla stepped into my room, her face set with determination. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded and pulled out the manila folder I'd brought with me. 6 months of evidence, carefully documented and organized. Bank statements showing Hale's hotel expenses, photos of them together at restaurants across town, text message screenshots that Ayla had somehow obtained from her husband's phone. We positioned ourselves on either side of the adjoining door. I could hear them moving around, probably getting comfortable for whatever they had planned next. "Now," Ayla mouthed. I knocked firmly on their door. The voices stopped immediately. "Room service," I called out in a slightly higher pitch than my normal voice. "We didn't order anything," Hale's voice came back suspicious. "Complimentary champagne from the management, sir, for our VIP guests." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. After a moment, I heard footsteps approaching the door. The lock clicked, and Hale opened it wearing nothing but a hotel bathrobe. His confident expression melted when he saw me standing there with Ayla beside me. "Hello, darling," Ayla said sweetly to her husband. "Fancy meeting you here?" Maren appeared behind Hale, wrapped in a bedsheet, her face going pale when she recognized me. "Brent, what are you doing here? How did you find us?" I held up the manila folder. "Funny thing about technology, Maren. It leaves trails everywhere. Hotel bookings, credit card statements, location data from your phone. You'd be amazed what a person can learn when they actually pay attention." Hale tried to close the door, but I put my foot against it. "I don't think so. We're just getting started." Ayla pushed past her husband into the room, and I followed. Maren clutched the bedsheet tighter around herself, looking between Ayla and me like a trapped animal. "This is harassment," Hale said, trying to regain his composure. "I'm calling hotel security." "Go ahead," I replied, settling into the room's armchair like I owned the place. "I'm sure they'd love to hear about how you've been using company funds to pay for these little getaways. Ayla brought copies of your expense reports." Ayla opened her purse and pulled out a thick stack of papers. 6 months of receipts, Hale, all charged to your corporate account. I wonder what the board of directors would think about their CEO using company money for his affairs." Maren's marketing instincts kicked in, and she tried to take control of the situation. "Brent, let's talk about this rationally. We're all adults here." "Rationally?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean like rational adults who sneak around behind their spouses' backs for months? Or rational adults who plan to divorce their husbands while emptying their bank accounts? Because yes, Maren, I heard that conversation too." Her face went white. "You were listening to us?" "The walls in these fancy hotels are thinner than you'd think. Amazing what you can hear when you're in the right place at the right time." Hale had managed to put on pants and was now pacing the room like a caged tiger. "What do you want? Money? We can work something out." I stood up slowly, enjoying the way both of them stepped back. "What I want is very simple. I want you to understand that your little game is over, both of you." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a second envelope. "Maren, these are divorce papers. Already filed, already processed. You'll find that our prenuptial agreement is very specific about infidelity. You get nothing." She grabbed the papers with shaking hands, scanning through them quickly. "This can't be legal. I never signed any prenup." "Check page 15. Your signature, witnessed and notarized. You signed it the night before our wedding, remember? You were so excited about the honeymoon that you barely read it." Ayla smiled grimly at her husband. "And Hale, darling, I've already spoken with your business partners about your creative accounting methods. Turns out they're not as understanding about personal expenses as you thought they'd be." The room fell silent except for the sound of Maren frantically flipping through the divorce papers and Hale staring at his wife in shock. "You planned this," Maren said finally. "Both of you. You've been working together." "Just like you and Hale have been working together," I replied. "The difference is, we're better at it." The next morning, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in weeks without the nagging feeling that something was wrong. Everything was wrong, of course, but now it was out in the open where I could deal with it properly. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. Maren had already started her counterattack. 3 missed calls from her lawyer, 2 from her sister Nina, and a string of text messages that progressed from apologetic to angry to threatening. The last one made me smile. "You think you're so smart, Brent. We'll see who's laughing when this is over." My phone rang. Nina's number. "Brent, what the heck is going on?" "Maren called me crying, saying you ambushed her at some hotel with Hale's wife. She's talking about restraining orders and harassment charges." Nina had always been the reasonable one in Maren's family, the sister who'd actually liked me from the beginning. She worked in social media marketing and had a talent for seeing through people's carefully constructed images. "Nina, I need you to listen carefully. Your sister has been having an affair with her boss for 6 months. Last night, his wife and I confronted them with evidence. Now Maren's trying to spin it like I'm the villain. Evidence? What kind of evidence? I spent the next 20 minutes walking Nina through everything Ayla and I had discovered. The hotel receipts, the text messages, the overheard conversations about their plans to leave their respective spouses. "Oh my God," Nina said when I finished. "I knew something was off. She kept asking weird questions about you, like whether you'd ever been violent or if you had anger issues. I thought she was just going through a rough patch in the marriage. She was setting up a narrative, making me look unstable so she could justify leaving and taking half of everything. What are you going to do now?" "That depends on what she does next. But Nina, I need you to know that whatever story she tells the family, whatever lies she spreads about me, none of it's true. I never touched her, never threatened her, never did anything except catch her cheating." After hanging up with Nina, I drove to Murphy's boxing gym. Frank was there early as always, setting up equipment for the morning classes. "You look like a man who needs to hit something," he said when he saw me. "More than you know." I started wrapping my hands. "Frank, if someone asked you about my character, what would you tell them?" He stopped adjusting the heavy bag and looked at me seriously. "I'd tell them you're one of the most controlled fighters I've ever trained. Never seen you lose your temper, never seen you take a cheap shot, always respectful to your sparring partners." "Why?" "Because I think someone's going to try to paint a very different picture of me soon." I spent the next hour working the bags, letting the rhythm of punches and footwork clear my head. By the time I finished, I had a plan. My first stop was the bank. I moved our joint accounts into my name only, which I could do legally since the divorce papers had already been filed. Maren would find out when her credit card stopped working, probably sometime this afternoon. Next, I visited my lawyer's office to make sure all the paperwork was bulletproof. David Chen had handled the sale of my construction business and had been the one to suggest the prenuptial agreement years ago. I'd thought it was overkill at the time, but now I was grateful for his paranoia. "The divorce should be straightforward," he assured me. "The prenup is ironclad, and with the evidence of adultery, she has no grounds to contest it. But Brent, you need to be prepared for her to get nasty. Cheating spouses often try to flip the script and make themselves look like the victim. She's already started. Her lawyer's been calling all morning. Don't talk to him directly. Refer everything to me, and be careful about any interactions you have with Maren from here on out. Document everything. Keep witnesses around when possible." I was walking back to my car when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check the local news website. Channel 7. The headline made my stomach drop. "Local woman seeks protection from allegedly violent husband." The article was short but devastating. Maren had given an interview claiming I'd been emotionally controlling throughout our marriage and that I'd recently become physically threatening. She painted herself as a successful businesswoman trying to escape an abusive relationship with a man who couldn't handle her success. The piece included a photo of her looking vulnerable and frightened, alongside a quote from her lawyer about the importance of supporting domestic violence survivors. There was no mention of her affair, no mention of Hale, no mention of the real reason our marriage was ending. My phone rang immediately, Frank's number. "Brent, you need to get down here right away. There's a news van in the parking lot and some reporter is asking questions about you." I drove to the gym faster than I should have, my mind racing. Maren was playing this perfectly from a public relations standpoint. She was getting ahead of the story, controlling the narrative, making herself look sympathetic before anyone could learn the truth about her affair. The news van was still there when I arrived, along with a small crowd of curious onlookers. I parked around back and entered through the gym's rear entrance. "They've been here for an hour," Frank told me. "Asking about your temper, whether I've ever seen you be violent, if you've been acting strange lately. I told them to get lost, but they're persistent." Through the front windows, I could see a reporter doing a live broadcast with the gym sign visible behind her. She was probably telling viewers about the violent husband who spent his time at this rough neighborhood boxing gym. "This is just the beginning," I said. "She's going to try to destroy my reputation before I can expose what she's really been doing." That's when I noticed Hale's silver BMW parked across the street. He was sitting in the driver's seat watching the news crew with obvious satisfaction. When he saw me looking, he smiled and gave me a little wave. Something cold and calculating settled in my chest. They wanted to play games? Fine, I could play games too. I walked outside, ignoring the reporter who immediately started shouting questions at me. Instead, I headed straight for Hale's car. He rolled down his window as I approached, still wearing that smug smile. "Enjoying the show?" I asked. "Just watching the news. Fascinating story about domestic violence. Really makes you think about how well we know the people around us." "You're right about that. For instance, I bet your business partners don't know how well they really know you." His smile faltered slightly. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo Ayla had sent me that morning. It showed Hale's company credit card statement with the hotel charges highlighted in yellow. A funny thing about corporate expense accounts. They're usually subject to audit by the board of directors, especially when someone raises questions about unusual charges. You're bluffing. Am I? Why don't you call your office and ask if anyone's been asking questions about your recent travel expenses? Hale's face went pale. He started to roll up his window, but I put my hand on the glass. One more thing, I said quietly. If you or Maren try to destroy my reputation with lies, I'll make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of man you really are. The choice is yours. I walked back toward the gym, leaving him sitting there. The reporter tried to intercept me again, but I brushed past her without a word. Inside, Frank was shaking his head. That was either very smart or very stupid. Time will tell. I started unwrapping my hands. Frank, I need a favor. Can you put together some character references for me? People who've known me for years, who can vouch for my character. Already on it. Half the guys in this gym have known you since you were a teenager. We've got your back. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Nice work with Hale. Check your email. The email contained a link to a private video file. When I opened it, I saw security camera footage from the hotel hallway last night. It showed Maren and Hale entering their room together, laughing and clearly intimate. The timestamp proved they'd been there for hours before Ayla and I confronted them. At the bottom of the email was a single line. Sometimes the truth needs a little help getting out. A friend? I forwarded the video to my lawyer with a note to keep it safe. Then I sat back and waited to see what Maren's next move would be. I didn't have to wait long. The restraining order was delivered to my house at 6 a.m. by a deputy sheriff who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The document claimed I'd been stalking and harassing Maren, that I'd threatened her with physical violence, and that she feared for her safety. It was complete fiction, but it was also legally binding. I wasn't allowed within 500 feet of Maren, her workplace, or her new apartment. Violating the order would mean immediate arrest. This is temporary, the deputy explained, not unkindly. You'll have a hearing in 2 weeks where you can contest it. But until then, you need to stay away from your wife. Ex-wife, I corrected, and I haven't been anywhere near her since the hotel. After he left, I called my lawyer. David was already aware of the situation and had been expecting this move. It's a standard tactic, he explained. She's trying to control the narrative and limit your ability to gather evidence. The good news is that restraining orders based on false allegations rarely hold up in court, especially when we can prove she's been lying. What about the news coverage? She's making me look like a monster. That's actually working in our favor. The more public she makes this, the more embarrassing it'll be when the truth comes out. And Brent, the truth always comes out. I spent the morning working in my garage, trying to keep my hands busy while my mind processed everything. The local news had picked up the story, and my phone kept buzzing with calls from reporters wanting my side of the story. I ignored them all. Around noon, Nina called. Brent, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was planning this restraining order thing. The family's all talking about it, and most of them believe her story. What story is she telling now? That you've been controlling and jealous for years, that you couldn't handle her success, that you finally snapped when you found out about her promotion at work. She's not mentioning Hale at all. Of course she's not. What about you? Do you believe her? Nina was quiet for a moment. Honestly? No. I've known you for 8 years, and I've never seen you be anything but respectful to her. Plus, some of the details don't add up. She claims you've been stalking her for weeks, but I was with her at lunch last Friday, and she never mentioned being scared or feeling threatened. Would you be willing to testify to that at the hearing? Absolutely. Brent, there's something else. I've been looking at Maren's social media posts from the past few months, and there are some things that don't match her current story. Photos of her at expensive restaurants, posts about working late with her amazing team, check-ins at hotels during times when she claimed to be afraid of you. Nina's social media expertise was exactly what I needed. Can you document all of that? Screenshots with timestamps? Already working on it. I'll send you everything by tonight. After hanging up, I decided to take a drive through town. I needed to get out of the house, and I was curious to see how the news coverage was affecting my reputation in the community. My first stop was the hardware store where I'd bought supplies for years when I was still in construction. The owner, Tom Bradley, greeted me with a concerned expression. Brent, I saw the news. That's some serious stuff they're saying about you. It's all lies, Tom. My wife was having an affair, and now she's trying to make me look like the bad guy. Tom studied my face for a moment, then nodded. I figured it was something like that. I've known you for 15 years, and you're not the type to hurt anyone. If you need someone to vouch for your character, you let me know. The conversation was repeated at 3 other businesses around town. People who'd known me for years were skeptical of the news reports, while strangers looked at me with suspicion and fear. I was leaving the coffee shop when I spotted Ayla sitting at a corner table, wearing sunglasses despite being indoors. She gestured for me to join her. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Hale's been busy today." I sat down across from her, keeping my voice low. "What's he up to?" "He called an emergency board meeting this morning, told them he'd discovered irregularities in some of our vendor contracts that were negotiated before I started working there. He's trying to set me up as a scapegoat for his own financial manipulations." "Can he do that?" "He's the CEO. He can do whatever he wants, at least in the short term. But I've been documenting everything for months. Every shady deal, every questionable expense, every time he used company resources for personal gain." Ayla pulled a flash drive from her purse and slid it across the table. "Everything's on there. Financial records, email communications, recorded phone calls, enough evidence to destroy him completely." "Recorded phone calls? How did you manage that?" "I've been planning this longer than you think. Hale's not the only one who can play games." I pocketed the flash drive. "What do you need from me?" "Help me expose him. If we can prove he's been embezzling from the company, it'll undermine everything he and Maren have been saying about us. They'll look like the criminals they actually are." That evening, I sat in my garage going through the files on Ayla's flash drive. The evidence was devastating. Hale had been using company funds for personal expenses for over 2 years, not just the hotel rooms where he met Maren. Expensive dinners, luxury vacations, even payments to a private investigator who'd apparently been digging up dirt on his business partners. The recorded phone calls were even more damaging. In one, Hale discussed bribing a city official to approve a zoning variance for a TechFlow property. In another, he talked about manipulating stock prices by timing the release of quarterly earnings reports. But the most interesting recording was a conversation between Hale and Maren from 3 weeks ago. They weren't just planning to leave their spouses, they were planning to start their own company using proprietary information stolen from TechFlow. "The client list alone is worth millions," Maren's voice said through my laptop speakers. "Once we're free of our current situations, we can approach them directly." "What about the non-compete clauses?" Hale asked. "Those only apply if we're caught? And who's going to catch us? Your wife's too trusting, and my husband's too stupid." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a cold anger settle in my chest. They hadn't just been cheating on their spouses. They'd been planning to steal from Hale's company and destroy both of our lives in the process. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my lawyer's office. "Brent, we have a problem," David said. "I just got a call from the district attorney's office. Maren's filed a formal complaint alleging that you've been violating the restraining order." "That's impossible. I haven't been anywhere near her." "She claims you were following her this afternoon, that you showed up at the coffee shop where she was meeting a friend. She has a witness who will testify that you were there." I thought about my encounter with Ayla at the coffee shop. "David, she's lying. I was meeting with someone else entirely, someone who can verify that I wasn't there to see Maren." "Who was your meeting with?" I hesitated. Revealing my connection to Ayla might complicate things, but hiding it would be worse. "Hale's wife. She's been helping me gather evidence about their affair." "Brent, please tell me you haven't been working with the other betrayed spouse to get revenge." "Not revenge, justice. And David, I have evidence that's going to change everything. They're not just cheaters, they're criminals." I spent the next hour walking my lawyer through everything on Ayla's flash drive. By the time I finished, his tone had completely changed. "This changes everything," he said. "If we can authenticate these recordings and financial documents, we're not just talking about a divorce case anymore. We're talking about corporate fraud, embezzlement, possibly even racketeering charges." "What's our next move?" "First, we need to get ahead of this restraining order violation allegation. I'm going to contact the DA's office and explain that you have evidence of a larger criminal conspiracy. Second, we need to decide how to use this information for maximum impact." After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of my garage, thinking about how far this had all escalated. 3 days ago, I'd been a man dealing with a cheating wife. Now I was sitting on evidence of corporate crimes that could send people to prison. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number that had been helping me. "Tomorrow's the day. Are you ready?" I typed back. "Ready for what?" The response came immediately. "To show this town who the real criminals are." The next morning brought a development I hadn't expected. I was drinking coffee and reading the news on my tablet when a breaking story appeared on the local news website. TechFlow Industries CEO under investigation for financial irregularities. The article was brief but damaging. An anonymous tip had led to a preliminary investigation by both the State Attorney General's office and the Securities and Exchange Commission. TechFlow's stock price had already dropped 15% in pre-market trading. My phone rang immediately. Ayla's voice was tight with excitement and fear. "Did you see the news?" "Just reading it now." "Did you leak the information?" "Not me, but whoever did has access to the same evidence we have." The article mentioned specific transactions that are only documented in the files I gave you. I thought about the mysterious text messages I'd been receiving. Someone else has been investigating this situation. Someone with resources and connections. Hale's in full panic mode. He called me an hour ago, screaming about corporate espionage and threatening to have me arrested. He thinks I'm responsible for the leak. "Are you safe?" "For now. But Brent, we need to be careful. When powerful people get desperate, they do dangerous things." After hanging up, I drove to my lawyer's office. David had called an emergency meeting to discuss how the news about TechFlow would affect my case. "This is better than we could have hoped for," he explained. "If Hale is under criminal investigation, it completely undermines Maren's credibility. She can't claim to be an innocent victim of domestic violence while simultaneously being romantically involved with someone who's allegedly embezzling corporate funds." "What about the restraining order hearing?" "We're going to request an emergency modification based on new evidence. I've already prepared a motion that includes some of the financial documents you provided, along with evidence of their affair and their plans to steal company secrets." David handed me a thick folder. "This is everything we're filing with the court today. Maren's lawyer is going to have a very bad afternoon when he sees this." I was leaving the lawyer's office when I spotted a familiar figure across the street. Maren was standing outside a small restaurant, talking animatedly on her phone. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in her posture. I stayed where I was, careful not to violate the restraining order, but close enough to observe. After a few minutes, Hale's BMW pulled up to the curb. Maren got in, and they drove away quickly. My phone buzzed with another text from my anonymous helper. "Follow them, but stay back." Against my better judgment, I got in my car and followed the BMW at a safe distance. They led me across town to a small office building I didn't recognize. Hale parked in the back, and they both went inside through a rear entrance. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, they emerged with a third person, a woman I didn't recognize carrying what looked like boxes of documents. My phone rang. Nina's number. "Brent, where are you? I've been trying to reach Maren all morning, but her phone goes straight to voicemail." "Why are you trying to reach her?" "Because I found something in her social media history that doesn't make sense. She posted a photo last week from some charity event, but the metadata shows it was actually taken 3 months ago. She's been backdating posts to create a false timeline." "A false timeline of what?" "Of being afraid of you. She's got posts about feeling unsafe, about being worried about her marriage, about seeking counseling for domestic issues. But they're all fake, all backdated to make it look like she's been documenting abuse for months." I watched as Hale, Maren, and the unknown woman loaded boxes into the trunk of the BMW. "Nina, can you prove the posts were backdated?" "Already done. I've got screenshots showing the original timestamps versus the current ones. It's clear evidence of digital manipulation." After Nina hung up, I continued watching the office building. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. The woman with them is Janet Morrison, a corporate lawyer who specializes in helping executives hide assets during investigations. They're destroying evidence. I took photos of the license plates and the building address, then headed home. This was information my lawyer needed immediately. David's reaction was swift and decisive. "We're filing an emergency motion to preserve evidence, and I'm contacting the FBI task force that handles corporate fraud cases. If they're destroying documents related to a federal investigation, that's obstruction of justice." "How long before something happens?" "Hours, not days. The federal government moves quickly when it comes to evidence destruction." That afternoon, I was working in my garage when I heard sirens in the distance, multiple sirens getting closer. I walked to the end of my driveway and saw a convoy of black SUVs and police cars heading toward the business district. My phone rang. It was Frank from the boxing gym. "Brent, you need to turn on the news. They're raiding TechFlow's offices." I rushed inside and turned on the local news channel. A reporter was standing outside TechFlow's headquarters, describing a coordinated raid by federal agents and local police. The building was surrounded, and employees were being escorted out while agents carried boxes of evidence. "This is a developing story," the reporter said. "Sources tell us this raid is connected to allegations of corporate fraud and embezzlement involving TechFlow's senior management." My phone buzzed with a text from Ayla. Hale just got arrested at his house. FBI agents, handcuffs, the whole thing. His lawyer's already there, but he looked terrified. 20 minutes later, another text. Maren too? They arrested her at the office building where you saw them earlier. Obstruction of justice charges. I sat in my living room, watching the news coverage and trying to process how quickly everything had changed. This morning, I'd been the alleged domestic abuser facing a restraining order hearing. Now, the people who'd been accusing me were under federal arrest. The local news switched to a live press conference with the U.S. attorney for the district. She was a stern-looking woman who spoke with the kind of authority that made politicians nervous. Today's arrests are the result of a months-long investigation into corporate fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice, she announced. We have evidence of a conspiracy to steal proprietary information, manipulate financial records, and destroy evidence of criminal activity. A reporter asked about the connection to the domestic violence allegations that had been in the news. We believe those allegations were part of an attempt to discredit potential witnesses and deflect attention from the ongoing criminal investigation. We take domestic violence very seriously, but we also take false accusations very seriously. My phone rang. David's voice was practically vibrating with excitement. Brent, the restraining order has been dismissed. The judge reviewed the new evidence and determined that Maren's allegations were likely false and made in bad faith. You're free to go anywhere you want. What happens now? Now we wait to see what other evidence the FBI has gathered. But I can tell you this. Your divorce case just became the least of Maren's problems. She's looking at federal charges that could put her in prison for years. That evening, I drove to Murphy's boxing gym for the first time in days. Frank was there with a small group of regulars, all watching the news coverage on the old television mounted in the corner. Well, Frank said when he saw me. Look who turned out to be the innocent one after all. The other fighters greeted me with handshakes and backslaps. These were men who'd known me for years, who'd never believed the accusations but had been powerless to help while the legal system worked itself out. You know what this means, Frank said as I started wrapping my hands. You're going to have reporters calling again, except this time they'll want to hear your side of the story. I'm not interested in talking to reporters. Maybe you should be. Your reputation took a beating this week. Now you have a chance to set the record straight. I thought about that as I worked the heavy bag. For days, I'd been painted as a violent, controlling husband. The truth was finally coming out, but would people remember the corrections as clearly as they'd remembered the accusations? My phone buzzed with another text from my anonymous helper. Well done. Justice isn't always pretty, but it's always necessary. I typed back, Who are you? This time, the response took several minutes. Someone who believes that cheaters and thieves should face consequences for their actions. Someone who thinks good people deserve better than being lied about and manipulated. Why did you help me? Because sometimes the system needs a push in the right direction, and because your wife and her boyfriend made the mistake of underestimating the wrong people. I stared at the phone, wondering who had been orchestrating events behind the scenes. Someone with access to financial records, law enforcement contacts, and the technical skills to gather evidence without being detected. But as I thought about it, I realized it didn't matter who had helped me. What mattered was that the truth had finally come out, and the people who'd tried to destroy my life were facing the consequences of their own actions. I finished my workout and headed home, feeling lighter than I had in months. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my reputation and my life. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully for the first time since this whole nightmare began. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in the courthouse waiting for what would hopefully be the final hearing in my divorce case. The criminal charges against Maren and Hale had dominated the local news, and public opinion had shifted dramatically in my favor. David sat beside me, reviewing his notes one final time. This should be straightforward, he said. Given the criminal charges and the evidence of adultery, the judge will almost certainly grant the divorce on your terms. Maren entered the courtroom with her lawyer, looking nothing like the confident marketing executive I'd been married to for 8 years. She was wearing a simple dress instead of her usual power suits, and she avoided making eye contact with me. Her lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Peterson, had been trying to negotiate a settlement for days. The criminal charges had destroyed any leverage Maren might have had in the divorce proceedings. Your Honor, Peterson began when the hearing started. My client acknowledges that mistakes were made in this marriage. She's prepared to accept the terms of the prenuptial agreement and requests only that the proceedings be concluded quickly and quietly. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd been on the bench for 20 years, looked skeptical. Mr. Peterson, your client spent considerable time and resources making very serious allegations against Mr. Marrow. Allegations that appear to have been completely false. Why should this court show her any consideration now? Your Honor, my client was under tremendous stress due to her work situation. She made poor decisions, but she never intended to harm anyone. I watched Maren's face as her lawyer spoke. She looked defeated, but there was still a flicker of the calculating intelligence that had made her successful in business. Even now, she was looking for an angle, a way to minimize the consequences of her actions. David stood to address the judge. Your Honor, Mr. Marrow has been the victim of a coordinated campaign of lies and manipulation. His reputation was damaged, his business was affected, and he was subjected to false criminal allegations. He requests that the divorce be granted immediately and that the court consider sanctions against Mrs. Marrow for her frivolous restraining order petition. The judge reviewed the case file for several minutes before speaking. Mrs. Marrow, please stand. Maren rose slowly, her hands clasped in front of her. In 30 years of legal practice and 20 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a clear case of bad faith litigation. You filed false allegations of domestic violence, obtained a restraining order under false pretenses, and attempted to manipulate the media to destroy your husband's reputation. These actions constitute an abuse of the legal system and will not be tolerated. The judge's voice grew stern. The divorce is granted on the terms specified in the prenuptial agreement. You will receive no alimony, no property settlement, and no share of Mr. Marrow's business assets. Furthermore, you will pay his legal fees and court costs. Maren's composure finally cracked. Your Honor, I have no income. I've been suspended from my job pending the criminal investigation. I can't afford to pay legal fees. Perhaps you should have considered that before filing false accusations against your husband. The hearing was over in less than 30 minutes. As we left the courtroom, Maren tried to approach me. Brent, can we talk, please? I stopped and looked at her, this woman I'd once loved enough to marry. What could we possibly have to talk about? I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am truly sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. You meant every bit of it, Maren. The affair, the lies, the false accusations, all of it was calculated to get what you wanted while destroying me in the process. The only thing you're sorry about is that you got caught. Her lawyer pulled her away before she could respond, and I walked out of the courthouse a free man. That afternoon, I met Ayla for coffee at the same shop where we'd first planned our investigation. She looked better than she had in weeks, despite everything she'd been through. How are you holding up? I asked. Better now that it's over. Hale's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutors aren't interested. They have him on multiple felony counts, and they want to make an example of corporate executives who think they're above the law. What about TechFlow? The board fired Hale and brought in a new CEO to clean house. They offered me his job, actually. Apparently, my cooperation with the investigation impressed them, I smiled. From betrayed wife to CEO. That's quite a promotion. It feels like justice. Hale spent years making me feel small and insignificant while he cheated and stole. Now he's facing prison time while I'm running the company he tried to destroy. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who'd been through hell together and come out stronger on the other side. Do you ever wonder who our anonymous helper was? Ayla asked. Every day. Someone with serious resources and connections, someone who knew exactly how to bring down Hale and Maren without getting their own hands dirty. Does it matter? We got justice. No, it doesn't matter, but I'd like to thank them someday. That evening, I was working in my garage when my phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number I hadn't heard from since the arrests. Congratulations on your victory. Justice isn't always swift, but it's usually thorough. I typed back, thank you for everything. I still don't know who you are, but I know I couldn't have done this without your help. The response came quickly. You did it yourself. I just made sure the right people saw the evidence at the right time. Sometimes the system works exactly as it should. Will I ever know who you really are? Probably not. But know this? There are people in this world who believe that cheaters and liars should face consequences for their actions. People who think that good, honest individuals like you deserve better than being manipulated and betrayed. I stared at the phone for a long time, then typed, Thank you for everything. You're welcome. Now go live your life. You've earned it. I never received another message from that number. 6 months later, I was back at Murphy's boxing gym, training a group of teenagers who reminded me of myself at their age. Young, eager, full of energy and dreams. Frank had asked me to help out with the youth program, and I discovered I enjoyed teaching. The local news had moved on to other stories, and people had mostly forgotten about the scandal that had briefly made me infamous. My business was thriving again, my reputation was restored, and I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. Maren had pled guilty to obstruction of justice charges and received 2 years in federal prison. Hale got 5 years for embezzlement and fraud. Their dreams of starting a company together had died in a courtroom, replaced by the reality of orange jumpsuits and prison cells. Nina had become a close friend, the one member of Maren's family who'd stood by me throughout the ordeal. She'd helped me understand how social media manipulation had been used against me, and she'd been instrumental in clearing my name online. "You know what I learned from all this?" she asked during one of our regular coffee meetings. "What's that?" "That the truth really does come out eventually. It might take time, it might require help from unexpected places, but lies can only survive for so long before reality catches up with them." I thought about that as I drove home that evening. The truth had come out, but not without cost. My marriage was over, my trust in people had been shaken, and I'd learned that the person I'd loved most in the world was capable of breathtaking cruelty. But I'd also learned that I was stronger than I'd thought, that there were people willing to help when justice was on the line, and that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best thing that happens to you. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house that was finally, truly mine again. Tomorrow, I would continue building the life I wanted, surrounded by people who valued honesty and loyalty. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully, knowing that the truth had won and that justice, however delayed, had finally been served. The nightmare was over. The rest of my life was just beginning.